Hector, I like the new background, looks great.
Yeah, I made a special one for the budget committee. So
Hector, when Kurt is going to join, will you promote him if he joins in the audience?
yeah, can you text me the last 4 digits of his phone number? Because he typically will call in.
Yeah, I can. 1 second.
Hey,
Hi, Joy. Welcome.
thank you very much.
I feel like it's been so long since I last saw you.
Wait. Hey. I just got it in from a doctor's appointment. I was worried I was going to be late.
Oh, thank you for rushing.
Yeah. Did you know that, hi Hector, did you know that you can get carpal tunnel and tarsal tunnel?
Oh no, that sounds painful.
Yep. Okay. Hey, Jordan.
Hello, Joy.
Hi, Hector. Jordan, are we going to get a paper packet for the budget?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm happy to print you one.
If you're not going to make one for everybody, I could try to do it without paper. I think I do.
No, I'm gonna get you paper because I'm a paper person too when it comes to budget.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a
I
lot.
made myself one. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. So I can just come get it tomorrow, maybe?
So wait until I give you a call. We're still finalizing some final numbers.
Okay.
My finance director is out sick, so we were not able to finalize them today, but I'm hoping to Thursday or Friday.
Okay,
But I will, Joy, I'll give you a call when it's ready and I
Okay.
can drop it off at
okay.
your
Or
house too.
you could send me an email or whatever you need to do. It's whatever works for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Zach, welcome. Counselor Byers, Counselor Panamareff, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's good. We got some new folks on budget committee. Zach, I didn't tell you this when you signed up, but it's technically a 3-year role.
I saw that at the final approval. It was snuck in there at the end, but I'm here for it.
Appreciate that.
Hey, Jordan, I watched half a video today on budget stuff.
Oh, good.
Intriguing, the difference between quorum and majority.
Oh, you were doing parliamentary rules on budget stuff.
No, it's it's whatever they had. The Department of the Treasury had some videos. They basically taped their Zoom trainings. So I
Okay.
got through half of one of them, but that was a little gotcha.
Oh, I love it. Well, we'll have you guide this meeting then with that knowledge.
Well, it's a funny thing, since we're waiting and everybody loves math. I'll just tell you that for quorum, it's how you'd normally think about it. You just look at the number of vacancies and take the majority or half plus one, right? To have a majority, you don't count the vacancies of council people. So in other words, so like Jason isn't going to be here. So we would still count him in determining the majority to pass something.
Oh, that makes sense. So
Yeah,
in a
higher burden.
still counts. The
Yeah, so
majority is higher than quorum.
the majority is higher than quorum for the budget committee, but they care about vacancies of a governing person versus a citizen budget person are different. And that's my fun fact.
That's a good fact. I like it. Hi, Jerry. Welcome in. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Anna, welcome as well.
Thanks.
All right. And Anna, technically, since you were the chair last year, we are going to have you start us off this year. And then we'll move forward. But let's give it another minute here until folks roll in. And I see that we have one call-in listener in the attendees. I want to check to see if that is Kurt Sexton. If it is Kurt, go ahead and press *6. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Created by people who actually design perfumes. Okay, this is a typical type of cyst. I see typical.
All right, and I do know Counselor Clark and Counselor Pestizo will not be able to make it tonight. So I think the gang may all be here. Okay. Anna, if you don't mind, we'll have you go ahead and open this budget committee meeting and we'll have roll call commence.
Okay, all right, we'll open the City of Talent Budget Committee, May 18th at 5:34. We will open the meeting and do a roll call.
Councilor Clark, Councilor Panemarov,
Here.
Councilor Greider,
Here.
Councilor Pestizo, Councilor Byers, Councilor Byers,
Here.
Councilor Parra Miller,
Here.
Mr. Zagjian,
Here.
Miss Joy Riley,
Here.
Mr. Ryan Peterson,
Here.
Miss Anna Demetto,
Here,
Miss Felicia Hazel, Mr. Jerry Lay.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
thank you. And I don't have the agenda in front of me. Can we show
Yes.
that, please?
Next will be
Sure.
meeting accessibility, which will be done by Hector.
Okay, thank you. Hector, we'll let you take it over right now.
This is an opportunity for the meeting to be translated into Spanish. This is a question for the public. If any attendees need this meeting interpreted into Spanish, we ask that they raise their hand now. Es una pregunta para el público. Si alguien necesitará esta reunión interpretada en español, por favor, alce su mano hoy. And I'll watch the attendees, Chair D'Amato.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, next item is election of the chair and the vice chair. Do we have any nominations for the chair? Counselor Panemarov. I'm never going to say your name right, but I'll just say.
I just like to hear
Counselor
you say
P.
it.
Can't we just say that, Counselor P?
You can. Yeah, so I'd like to nominate Anna D'Amato because she does such a great job every time.
Second.
Any other nominations or discussion?
I guess my only one would be, I would volunteer just to give Anna a year off on this. But
I would second your nomination.
I think somebody better nominate me, but we have, I know we got one on the table.
All right, I will nominate member Ryan Peterson for chair.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Counselor Panemarov?
So are you withdrawing your name from nomination, or are we gonna
I'm not
have
really sure
to?
how it works when there's two people nominated. I would like to take my name off the table. If Ryan is willing to step in, that'd be great.
So then I will withdraw my motion to nominate you, so we don't get in a popularity contest. If it's okay with the second.
Thank you. Is that a yes? Yes, I see a head. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
All right, so the nomination on the table right now is Ryan Peterson. Any other nominations? hard to see everybody. I don't see any hands. So I think at this point we take a roll call, right?
Right.
Okay, roll call.
Counselor Paneroff,
Yes.
Counselor Greider,
Yes.
Counselor Byers,
Yes.
Counselor Parra Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Zach Zegjian,
Yes.
Miss Joy Riley,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan Peterson,
Yes.
Miss Anna Diamato,
Yes.
Mr. Jerry Lay.
Yes.
Nomination carries.
All right, well, thank you. So I am going to turn it over to Ryan. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. So at this time, I'll take nominations for vice chair.
Oh, I'll raise my. I'm raising my hand, Ryan.
Oh, I'm
This is
sorry, I
Joy.
can't see all the attendees.
I can't see, I can't find the gallery view either, but I'd like to nominate Felicia Hazel. Is she, yeah. Is she here?
She is not here.
Oh, I still nominate her.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to nominate Felicia Hazel as vice chair. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Greider. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm sorry. Counselor Paneroff,
Yes.
Counselor Greider, I'm sorry, Counselor Greider.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Byers,
Yes.
Counselor Parra Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Zach Zegjian,
Yes.
Miss Joy Riley,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan Peterson,
Yes.
Miss Anna Diamato,
Yes.
Miss Felicia Hazel is not present, Mr. Jerry Lay.
Yes.
Nomination carries.
All right, thank you very much. Since we have now a chair and a vice chair, we can get an overview of the budget process.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair Peterson. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Budget Committee, for joining us tonight. Tonight, I'm going to walk you all through just the general budget process for the budget this year, and then the big budget message. I will say that the Finance Director and I are still working on the final little touches of the actual budget document. So we hope to get that to you all soon, but that will be presented in detail next week at our meeting. Today will be bigger overarching themes. With that, I'll jump in, particularly for those folks who are new here today. So the budgeting process for us as a municipality, you know, they say it starts from the budget officer and the budget committee is formed, but really budgeting is a year-round process. It really kicks into gear with the citywide goal setting, which occurred from November through March this year, which is used as kind of the guiding budget document. But we went ahead and nominated a budget officer, and you all agreed and were added to the budget committee. Since that committee has been formed, staff has been working on preparing that proposed budget, really taking into account our citywide goals. Our department heads reviewed all of their expenditures, looking at projections for how revenue is coming and what our expenses will be. And then we reach this point in the road where I present to you all the budget message, so the main things that we're finding from that budget. Next week, we will go ahead and hold a public hearing on the budget document itself. I'm sorry, folks, I've been operating on too much computer time today. And at that May 25th meeting, we will have the chance to decide that more discussion is needed, and we can go ahead and take our tentative meeting on June 1st, or the budget committee can decide if they would like to approve the budget. Once the budget committee approves the budget will move to city council for their own budget hearing, and it will be up to city council to then adopt the budget, make appropriations, impose taxes, and categorize taxes. And then by June 15th, it is pertinent that we then certify our taxes by submitting our documentation to the county assessor. So I really want to highlight in this visual, everything in purple is something done in full view of the public. The budget is one of the most important documents for a city. It charts our course throughout the whole year and sets the stage for years to come. And it's also an expression of our values and our priorities. They're really important to have that public view, and the gold stars, and you all get gold stars for being on the budget committee, because it's an essential role, and one would say the most important role that can be done throughout the year. Any questions on budget process, timing, next steps, etc.?
Councilor Conamara?
Yeah, thanks. I have a question about timing. So, because I was watching a video and I don't remember what the answer was, but it was something about prior to the public hearing that the completed budget has to be available for public viewing for a certain amount of time. And I'm just wondering if we're cutting it close with the public hearing. That's next week, right?
So we're going to have 2 hearings, one with the budget committee and then one with the city council itself. We will have done enough time for both of them. I will say our public hearing at city council, our notice for that will depend on when the budget committee approves the budget document. But I will double check the timing and follow up with you on that one.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, any more questions? Okay, with that, we will march valiantly ahead.
All right, thank you. We can just move ahead to the budget message.
Okay, perfect. All right, I placed this comic on here today because really it's the opposite of what I hope to present and bring forward to you all today. You know, the purpose of the budget message is to really clearly show, you know, where our priorities are, what trends we're seeing, so that folks can access the budget and really what it means without having to be a numbers expert. So in today's presentation, I'm going to go ahead and do an overview of that budget message. I did send you all an electronic version today, a written version, which will be included with our budget per local budget law. But today, you know, I'm going to go through kind of the context that we're existing in of creating this budget, the overall impacts of the budget, our goals, and how this budget helps us attain those. Significant changes that we're seeing compared to last year, some budget challenges that we're facing and what we're going to do about them, and what's to potentially come down the line. You know, my ask to you all is, if you have questions throughout, feel free to raise them. By no means do you have to wait till the end. I would love this to be more of a conversation rather than a presentation. Before we get started, though, I do want to give 2 special shout outs today. One is to our new finance director, Tessa DeLine, who has joined us. She has less than a month here with the city, and she just jumped into this budget day one. And one of the reasons that we're a little delayed on a budget document is Tessa is also out sick this week. So she has been working double time to help us make this happen. And the second shout out is to Kurt Sexton, who is joining us tonight. Kurt is our past finance director, and he has been helping with Tessa's transition, answering every question that Tessa and I have about budgeting, and he's here tonight to answer any other questions that may come up. So thank you so much, Kurt, for being here, and excited to have you for one more round of budgeting before official retirement happens. Okay. So we'll jump right in. Context. You all are highly aware, but the talent community has been impacted with a lot these past few years. The coronavirus has huge impacts on our mental health, our economic health, our physical health. That's really, you know, impacted almost every part of our life in the talent community's lives. In September 2020, the Alameda fire hit, taking away 1/3 of our homes, 2/3 of our brick and mortar businesses, and that recovery is still ongoing. And most recently, the Russia-Ukraine war, we've seen some in-cost to some essential goods, which is further causing some stress to our community, as well as influencing our budget projections, as we expect those supply chains to continue to struggle. So these are some major events that we're creating this budget in and directing our goals towards. And they have had a financial impact on the city, just like they're having financial impact on our community members. Just to share the main themes, the main takeaways of what the impacts have been with this current context, is that we are continuing to see a reduction in our typical revenue. And when I say typical revenue for a city, it's usually we're funded through our property taxes, through our water utility bills, and through the fees that we charge on those water utility bills. You know, with the fire and with the loss of community members, with the loss of properties, all of those types of revenues have decreased. We have less utility bill accounts, so we're charging less fees. So as expected, they are declining. But at the same time, we've had really high increases in atypical revenue. And I'll show you a chart a little later on. But that atypical revenue is really primarily, one, the revenue coming out of our community development department. We have so much building going on in Talent that we're seeing double the number of permits that we're processing compared to any other year, as far as I looked back. The other atypical revenue that we'll get deep into today is grant funding. We have seen this incredible fluctuation in grant funding for our community, and it's been really beneficial in offsetting that natural reduction that we saw post-fire and from COVID. On the expense side of the line item, we are seeing increases in expenses, largely driven by inflation and supply chain issues. You know, we are seeing 10 to 20% increases in our material costs. So when we go out to buy a water pipe, when we go out to buy valves, you know, they are costing more than we have ever seen them in the past. We have also seen really high insurance costs. Because of the fire, our premium has gone up. And so we, you know, are seeing costs come in through that way. And then labor costs, cost of living has all go up. We are currently in labor negotiations, but we do expect to see some cost of living adjustments for this upcoming year. So no major surprises coming through that pipeline. I gotta admit, I made myself all these notes and I haven't even glanced at them. That's okay, that written document will share it all. You know, so while these trends are occurring, while we're seeing this reduction in our typical revenues, we're seeing this increase in expenses, you know, I do believe that these are temporary. You know, what we've seen in this past year, 46% of our single family homes have received permits to rebuild. That means a lot of our community is coming back, a lot of that property value is coming back. So I expect our property tax in the next, you know, 3 years to start stabilizing back to what it was pre-fire. Similar sign of hope and our community coming back together is our manufactured home parks are renting spaces again. And we expect all of our manufactured home parks to be back online at some point during next year. You know, as more folks come into the city, that is typically when we see an increase in revenue, as well as when we increase our city services. And then of course, grant funding is really having a big impact on our budget in a really good way. You know, I am saying all this with a caveat though. You know, these times are fluctuating. We're predicting what will happen, but we don't know for sure what will happen. So like last year when we did a supplemental budget, when we better understood the real impacts to us, we may need to do a supplemental budget again. I will also say likely because this is since my first go around, I want supplemental budgets to keep giving me that budget practice. I'm joking. No one is that needy, that greedy for more. So really this budget that we put together this year is really trying to focus around our 6 major goals. And these are the 6 major goals that were done by a great collaboration between council and our committees. But before I jump into these goals, I do want to just say out loud some celebration around the achievements that we've been able to accomplish this past year as a city. So this past year, the city really coordinated with federal, state, and local agencies to do the wildfire debris cleanup, which is really why we've seen so much rebuild because all of our properties are finally clean. The city established a like-for-like SDC waiver. This lowered the cost of rebuilding. While we did, you know, lose expected revenue as a city through SDCs, it was a great tool to help folks build back and come back in and keeping costs low. And of course, we're processing over 200% more permits than we ever had the year previous to the fire. This past year, we also accomplished, we hired 2 additional Spanish bilingual staff. We started our first Spanish social media and regular Spanish communication. We have trying to reconnect our community. We've gone back to normal city hours at City Hall. We opened our community center to rentals again. We're trying to fill the vacant seats on our committees and commissions. And we've really been able to celebrate and have fun with a lot of community events that were on hold throughout COVID. So all really fun signs with a lot of hope in them. And we're committed to continuing all that good work that we've worked on this past year and expanding it and segueing it, and also highlighting it through these 6 goals that you see on the screen. So in the budget message I sent you all, it details exactly how we're trying to use this budget to support the goals. I'll do a brief summary here, but if I forget anything, it is in that budget document. But around affordable housing, this budget sets aside significant funds, particularly in business consultants and contracted personnel, to help with a buildable lands inventory, to know where we have room to grow, for a housing needs analysis so we know what we want to support, for recommending code amendments so we can encourage affordable housing, and of course, development plans so that we can have actual plans in place for when funding comes down the pipeline, we can jump on it and hopefully get things built here in Talent. Community safety, here in purple, is comprised of our police services. It's our environmental design, hazard mitigation, emergency preparedness. A lot of our grant money is going towards this category. We're still working on dealing with a lot of the FEMA reimbursements. So we have a lot of grant management. We're updating our emergency plans, really trying to get the word out to our community and build some community volunteer response teams. We'll really be focusing on continuing that hazard mitigation and supporting emergency preparedness. And I gotta say thank you to all those folks who have been mowing their lawns and telling their neighbors to mow their lawns. I just did a drive through Talent, and folks are on it this year, which is great. Sustainability is, our town is going to keep experiencing a lot of climate change impacts. We still face a lot of wildfire risk, and so trying to mindfully take steps to help our sustainability in the face of those changes. We are still putting funds away to get recycled water at Chuck Roberts Park. That'll be a lot of water saving for our community. We want to relook at our water conservation and management plan to see how we could better conserve water and reduce our reliance on some declining watersheds. And then a really, really big topic that'll hit us next year is called climate friendly areas. And that's establishing a place in our community that'll have its own specific set of rules and its own regulations to try to increase, or I should say, try to decrease our carbon footprint by having more dense housing, mixed use, bike infrastructure, et cetera. This is coming down through state statute and something that we will be required to participate in, but we also look forward to participating in since it aligns so closely with our goals. Transportation, we have really focused on getting the West Valley View Road reprofile built. It hits 5 of the TSP, or Transportation System Plan projects, which is awesome. But because of it, it has taken a lot of our funds that were available for large scale transportation projects. So this year is likely going to be a year of waiting for those funds to come back up to kind of replenish. By no means will we stay still. There's a lot of planning in the works this coming year to help us kind of relook at and reprioritize what those projects will be as we start funding them. Community engagement, we've seen a huge boost in our community engagement. I think we have our typically highest attendance at city council meetings in any of our memories. And that's largely due to what was put in place last year. We got a community engagement director through Hector Flores. So we're going to continue supporting that work, specifically by also hiring a separate city reporter. Hector currently fills both roles. So creating some more capacity for him, as well as making sure that we're meeting all of our records retention requirements as a city. And last but not least, around our economic development, one thing we're highly aware of is our businesses are not building back as quickly as our residents. We're putting funds aside for us to start looking at our city code and our policy to see how we could encourage and support businesses coming back to our community. We have funds to establish an incubator hub. And of course, the Harvest Festival is in full-blown planning mode, and that'll be a fun time to celebrate the businesses in our community. So those are the major goals and some of the ways that we will be supporting them this coming year. There is still a lot of grant funding that's unallocated. And so that'll be a great conversation to have throughout the year as we better identify opportunities and needs to use those grant funds to support where we want to head. Okay, significant changes to revenue. The graphs finally get into the picture here. So what you all are looking at here is just our revenue. It's not including our fund balances, but just the revenue that we've seen since fiscal year 19, what we expect we'll see this fiscal year 22, and what we expect to see next year. Everything in gray is kind of those typical city revenue sources that typically make up the most of our general fund. So that's our property tax, that's all of our state tax revenue that we get, our public safety surcharges. That's what the gray area is. Orange is how much revenue we bring in through really our community development department. So that's all of the building permits, zoning permits, fees, etc. And then the blue is the grants. And so really the takeaway I want to see here is we have seen post-fire an expected decline in those property tax and public safety surcharges as we expected, an increase due to the building and all of our licenses, permits, and community development fees, and a huge impact of grant funding. Typically, if you look in previous years, grant funding makes up about 1% of our general fund revenues. This coming year, we expect a 33% to 36% share of our general fund in revenues, which is great. And I'm going to jump into the details of what those grants are, so that you as the budget committee know what funds are restricted and what aren't, and what we plan to do with them. Yeah, Councilor Panamara?
Yeah, I have a question about the decline in the gray, the typical charges from, so you have 2021, so this is all post-fire of 2.6 million, then estimated for 2022, 2.5, and then going further down in 2023. And I do see that's proposed, so I'm wondering if that's just what we typically do, is have a conservative estimate in our budgets as far as all revenues. We tend to do that, or is there some other mechanism in there?
So this is a conservative estimate. What we did is we based it off of the conservative estimate from last year. I do, expect this to be higher because we have seen rebuild occur and happen, and because we did see some property tax revenue higher than we thought last year. But given that we're, still in a rebuild category, we preferred for this first draft budget to stay conservative, and then with a supplemental budget, up that if we see that those revenues are coming back the way we expected. So it's mostly our comfort zone there.
So if I could follow up, as far as, the safety charge and all of that stuff, that comes on the water bill, does it, or the property taxes?
The public safety charge comes on the water bill.
Okay, so I mean, everybody who's paying the water bill is paying that. So as these houses come back and they're turning their water back on, then they're starting to pay the water. So I would expect from, 21 to 22 to 23, those kinds of things to kind of go up gradually in real life. And is that accurate?
Yes, I expect that for 22, no, because I think what we experienced in 22 is it took a year to clean up post-fire. So folks hadn't finished rebuilding. In this coming year, I do expect to see those households return. Looking at our permit numbers, I actually have them in front of me. So we've had 46% of our single family homes submit for a permit to rebuild. Just now we're starting to see folks fully move into their homes. Quick math, we have getting around 42 certificate of occupancies. And we know that number is higher because not everyone needs a certificate of occupancy to be able to move in. But yes, I do think those could be higher, and Tess and I are in conversations around that number. We'd prefer to be on the conservative side at the moment, and then adjust higher as some analyses finish.
And I just wanted to say, I do appreciate that. I just wanted to know if there was something else that I wasn't aware of that would change that pattern. So that was a really great explanation. Thank you.
Yeah. And I see Joy, your hand up.
Yes, as the houses are being rebuilt, they're better houses, mostly, and maybe mostly, I think so. But anyway, what I'm wondering is the county assessing as soon as they have their occupancy? Is the county reassessing at the new values?
Yeah, so I actually talked to the county assessor about this. The way that he described it to me is they get all of the major permit data from every single jurisdiction throughout the year. And then what they do is they go to the property January of every year and they look and they say, oh, look, this property has built only the foundation. So we're going to put 5% of what we think the end value of this property will be on this year's tax roll. And then a year later, they'll come back. And if the house is fully built, at that point, they'll do 100% of the expected property value. So it is an incremental increase to a property value if a house isn't finished within a year.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you,
We have
Joy.
another question from Member D'Amato.
Thank you.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so last year in January, my house we hadn't started building, but we did build and complete in November, and I moved in then. Our property bill in November was pretty low because it was still based on that, even though we were completed by the end of the year. And I know this year is when it'll be assessed at a higher value. So it does take a couple of years for it to catch up. I mean, that's all. I just want to say that real life experience. I was expecting it to be much higher because we were, anyway, it's really what they see in January. If there's nothing, they're going to assume that it's a percentage of it.
Exactly. And, you know, one of the reasons that I would like to do a supplemental budget is so that we have more accurate data around property tax assessed values. And the other part too is the conversation on urban renewal going on will also impact the potential property taxes the city collects, not necessarily this year, but in future years. And so we prefer to stay on the conservative side while we still figure out what those impacts will be charting forward. Okay, thank you. So I did want to detail, because grants are having such a huge impact on our budget compared to, you know, quote unquote, typical budget years, is I want to just go into details of what those major grants are. So ARPA stands for American Rescue Plan Act. And this is from the federal government. And it's a chunk of funds that have been given to each jurisdiction to help them offset the COVID-19 impacts. And that definition is incredibly broad and can be applied for a lot of different categories. So we received, of this 1.5 million, we received half of it in fiscal year 22, and we'll receive the second half of this in fiscal year 23. The vast majority of those funds we have not allocated in this budget. You know, we started the conversation with City Council of where we best see those going. A lot of great questions and thoughts were brought up that we're still researching. So we're setting those funds aside to be allocated as things clarify around how we can best use them. The Stabilization Fund, this came from the state. This is a property tax stabilization where the state just gave us a one-time payment of just under $970,000 to offset that property tax revenue loss that we could expect to recur after the fire. Since we're cash basis, this stabilization fund has hit in fiscal year 22. So it is currently just plopped into our beginning fund balance for this upcoming year. What's really great about these stabilization funds is that there's no strings attached and there's no timeline attached. So they can really be used to help stabilize our general fund. I should mention that ARPA funds, we do need to use by the end of fiscal year 24. MWAP funds we use by the end of this year, as well as the HB 5006 funds. MWAP stands for Municipal Wildfire Assistance Program, and this is also a state program that has provided us funds for very specific technical and staff capacity efforts. So this MWAP funding can be used for things like hiring a consultant to do a housing needs analysis, updating our EOP. All of our Spanish communications is currently being charged the Municipal Wildfire Assistance Grant. So we're doing a lot of really cool things. It is a reimbursement grant. And so we expect to be reimbursed $610,000 for this fiscal year 23. Some of that, it hit our books in fiscal year 22 as an expense, but the reimbursement papers have not yet been submitted. And then HB 5006 is another state grant that's coming for planning staff capacity specifically. So we'll be using those funds for our planning staff to get us some new equipment so that we can do some scanning of plans to get them electronic, getting more staff and consultants in to help us look at code amendments and the like to help us in our rebuild and recovery. And then finally, the Fema funds, those are funds that we submitted for reimbursement to replace lost equipment, lights, all of our VOC testing that every household had to do before getting reattached to our water system. FEMA reimburses for all that. We have submitted and expect to receive a $200,000 reimbursement in fiscal year 22. So this $115,000 is the remaining reimbursement that we can expect for expenses that we have occurred since the fire started. Any questions on our major grants? These are all the very large scale grants that are impacting our budget. Beautiful. On to the, pardon me, Councilor Byers.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there are any restrictions at all connected with the ARPA funding.
There's not many.
Okay.
They do need to they need to be encumbered by fiscal year 24. So that means either spent or earmarked to a project that is in the works and will be completed shortly. But a lot of ways ARPA can be used for anything that can be logically linked to a COVID-19 impact.
Okay. And one follow-up question. What has been the speed of reimbursement once those papers have been submitted for the reimbursement grants?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on which partner we're working with. FEMA, it has been I would say several months long process. I do expect MWAC HB 506 to be maybe a 6-week process at max.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But that is a best guess and not a necessarily accurate.
Right.
So I will follow up if I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, expenses. And I do want to mention, yeah, I'm showing just the general fund tonight because that is where we're seeing the most significant changes compared to our water fund, park fund, street fund. But those will all be highlighted in the budget document along with graphs for those. It's also our general fund where we're seeing expense trends differ from last year. And the biggest difference is in our personnel services costs. We expect to see a change, in our labor negotiations, which are currently ongoing. We do expect to see some cost of living adjustment. I would like to add 1.5 FTE, one being a city recorder and then a admin support position. I lost track of where I'm in at this point, apologies. And we're also seeing just general increases in just other things that are tied to personnel. Materials and services, we do see another uptick, largely due to just the cost of increase in supplies. We're offsetting that impact by just knowing that we're going to accomplish less with the money we have, particularly when it comes to larger scale projects. The biggest difference you'll see in this upcoming budget in the general fund compared to last is that we are changing how we are accounting for those grants. So in the previous year, we were assigning expenses to all of the different departments where they felt like they most fit for the grant money. But we found it was very difficult to track and keep track of invoices to submit for reimbursement. So in this next budget, all of our grant expenses are going to hit within the admin department. And I will go ahead and highlight in the budget document itself. So you will see large increases in the admin department's spending compared to last year because of that accounting shift. Okay, any questions on expenses?
I do have one. I can see the personnel services are rising quite a bit, but since there are no numbers on the axis or anything? I'm not sure how much. Can you give us an idea how much that is?
Yeah, I can. As I was saying that out loud, I was noticing the exact same thing. To me, this looks a little high, but I will tell you that what we baked into the budget currently as our best guess with labor negotiations, a 5% COLA raise, as well as some likely one-time bonuses to support the cost of living that folks are experiencing now. This also includes that one FTE for the city recorder and the filling of a vacancy. We've been carrying a lot of vacancies this year. And so one of the reasons you've seen such a high increase here is because it is as if we were fully staffed. This estimated to show what our current staffing is, which we're currently carrying about 8 vacancies. So this is what it would cost if we were able to fill all of those vacancies.
I see. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And so I'm gonna have to follow up, Ryan, with exact numbers because it's a spreadsheet I'd have to open and I'm afraid of losing screen control.
That's fine. It'll be in the budget we get next week, right?
Yes, it definitely
That's
will.
fine.
This is actually a great segue into our challenges that we expect to see for this coming year and meeting our expenses of this budget. One of those major challenges, and I'm going to jump to staffing because we just talked about personnel. A huge challenge for us here right now is staffing. 50% of my staff has less than 2 years experience with the city, and we're carrying substantial vacancies, particularly in our police department. Recruitment continues to be a challenge. We're also in the middle of labor negotiations, and so it's really hard to predict what actual expenses will be. Some other challenges that we're facing for this particular budget is in those tax projections. As member D'Amato said, and member Riley brought up, trying to estimate what property value is coming back on our books when because of the rebuild is still an ongoing process. The urban renewal district right now is proposal. If the urban renewal district moves forward, it will likely have impacts to the city budget, still figuring out what those impacts would be, but those will influence us all. And then we're really looking at the changing vendors here at the city as well. Pardon you all, I just got a brand new insulin pump and it beeps at me all the time and I never know why. So we are hoping to change vendors this year, just to kind of freshen things up, make sure we're getting the right costs for our customers. And so often it's hard to predict, what that vendor change may change the bottom line. But these are all challenges that we're looking forward to negotiating, to navigating in this upcoming year. But they will likely lead us to wanting to have a supplemental budget later on, as we better understand what revenue we are seeing coming in and what expenses we actually are incurring. Including what's to potentially come, what we would love to also do with this coming year is start reviewing our fees as a city. A lot of our fees haven't changed since they were established. And we've done a lot of really great work with master plans. But what we're finding is our master plans are pretty off on the estimate of how much it'll cost to do different projects. So we'd love to update those cost estimates and master plans and use them to review the fees and when we can expect to accomplish things based off of revenue projections. Also coming into it, working with a new finance director is a lot of interest in shifting us next year to a modified accrual basis budget. Currently, City of Talent is a cash basis budget, which means that when we receive a check is when we record it in our books, and when we pay an invoice is when we record it in our books. So it's really hard to track things over the course of time, and then very hard to project into the future, since there's that mismatch of when things occur. So we're looking to work with our auditor to make that potential basis change for next year. So those are the major projects that we would potentially expect that could impact budget over this coming year. And the main key elements and themes, I'm really looking forward to getting you guys all the actual budget documents so you can look at our numbers and go from there. So I'd love to throw it back to you all for any questions. If there's any specific things that you want me to look up, I can always come back at you with full information.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Any questions from any members? Member Riley?
Hey, I'm sorry, Jordan, but would you just repeat yourself about why we're changing the cash from the cash basis to whatever the new way will be?
Have a modified accrual basis. Yes, and I will say it's not a guaranteed change. It's something that we'd like to explore with our auditor if it's possible. And I'd also love to invite Kurt, our past finance director, current support finance director, to also correct me if I'm sharing wrong. One reason why is our current finance director is very comfortable in the modified accrual world. That's what she's been using for the past 16 years and really has her systems down with it. The other reason why modified accrual is nice, and admittedly, this is my first cash basis budget as well with my experience in city government, is modified accrual is rather than waiting for a check to actually hit our bank account to record it, is we can record the expectation that the check is coming, and then we can record when it actually hits, and then we can better link and keep track of making sure we're getting A, the revenue we expected, and B, putting it in the time horizon that we thought was occurring. For example, Joy, in all of these grants that we got, we spent money for the grants in this current year, but we're not going to get reimbursed until next year. And so it's hard to track of, oh, we didn't actually receive those grants funds in this upcoming fiscal year. We're making up for expenses that we took in the last year. And mostly it's institutional knowledge tracking that. Councilor Pranav, before we hand it to you, I'd love to invite Kurt to help explain a little better the difference between modified accrual and cash basis, if you're able to.
Yeah, the main difference, we've been operating under a cash basis, which Jordan explained pretty well. We record incomes when we actually receive money. We record expenses when we actually pay the check. In a modified accrual system, which is probably used by 95% of the businesses in the world, simple things like the purchase of a large asset, perhaps a piece of property or a large piece of equipment, that asset is actually reflected on your books and is recorded as an asset. In the cash basis, it's not. It's recorded as an expense. And so it's easier to track it's a much easier way to keep track of all the physical assets of the city, which means all of the equipment, all of the properties, all of those things, because those would actually then be recorded on the books, on the general ledger, and you'd be able to see that. But in a cash basis, that doesn't happen. When you purchase something, it's expensed that moment, regardless of whether you think that item that you purchase is going to be used up in 30 days or if it's going to be used for 30 years. It's expensed all in 1 year. Whereas in modified accrual, if you purchase a large asset, such as a piece of equipment, a vehicle, it's expensed or depreciated over the taxed life of that asset. Vehicles are usually 5 to 10 years, depending. And so instead of taking the hit for your expense on a $40,000 or $50,000 vehicle all in 1 year, you would record the purchase of the asset, but you would then depreciate that asset or expense that asset over the life. So it would be maybe 15 or 20% a year. So the modified accrual basis of accounting, like I said, is probably the most generally used system of accounting throughout the world, let alone just the United States. And for most businesses, which the city isn't really a business, but operates in many ways similar to a business. If you operate a large business, you typically, at the end of the year, use your accounting system to determine your taxable liability to the government. And the modified accrual system does a much better job of doing that than the cash basis. Both are acceptable, but the modified accrual is a much better system for recording everything in a more reasonable manner. So I don't know what else I could tell you about it. But like I said, it's not something unusual. My understanding is the city of Talent used to operate under a modified accrual system and converted to a cash basis. I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, or probably longer than that at this point.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember when we made the switch, and at the time it was like, oh, this is going to be so much better to do it this way. So that's why I was curious about why we were switching back. So the depreciation though, so it just tracks, it's easier to track depreciation rather than just have to figure it out for taxes. Is that what you're saying?
it's not depreciation. Right now, if you asked me as the past finance director what the total assets of the city were, I can't tell you. I can't give you a dollar number for that. Because as I said, in cash basis, when you purchase something, all of it is expensed and it's not carried anywhere on your books anymore. You may have a spreadsheet somewhere in your files that has a listing of it, and we do have that, but it's not reflected on your books.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt, for jumping in that much better explanation.
No, thank you, Kurt. Councilor Penamaroff, did you still have any questions on that?
Well, I was just going to ask if there's, I think I've read that modified accrual is best practice, but that might have been in the business context, and I'm just wanted to get some, assurance that modified accrual is best practice for governments as well. I think that's the case, and Kurt certainly made a great case for it, but that was my question.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? All right, well, seeing none. Member
No,
D'Amato.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Jordan, do you think we might get the budget before the weekend? It's just really hard to read it when you work full time, and I'm just hoping we might have the weekend to review it.
Agreed. That is my goal. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, if there is nothing else, thank you all for meeting tonight. Thank you, Jordan, for the excellent presentation, and Kurt for the helpful information. With that, meeting adjourned at 6:24 p.m. See you all in a week.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for doing a great job.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Jordan, do we use this link?
This will be the same link. Yes. So we
Okay.
will start tonight at 7 p.m.
Oh,
I thought
Why-
this was going to go a little longer.
oh,